He should be arrested. He should be indicted. And the charges that he's been indicted on are minimal as opposed to the charges that I believe he could have been indicted on. I don't know what's going to happen. When he announces himself, it's almost like he's attempting to organize his domestic terrorists to show up and to resist him being arrested. You have to be careful with him.
All right, guys. So with rumors swirling about President Trump potentially getting arrested for hush money payments to former adult film actress Stormy Daniels, we got to talk about the reaction from the left-wing liberal media, because I told you guys this is like Christmas for them, okay? There's going to be probably an infinite amount of masturbation material for the mainstream liberal media if Trump actually does get arrested, okay? You will never stop hearing about this. You will never stop seeing it. If Trump is actually walked out of Mar-a-Lago, arrested and sent to New York, right? Extradited to New York, I guess you could say that, right? You'll never stop hearing about it. You'll never stop seeing the images. Again, this would replace all of adult online entertainment for Democrats and liberals, right? They would just play footage of Trump getting arrested, and they would have orgasms to that for the rest of their lives. So with that being said, clearly the liberal media powers that be are really anxious about this happening, okay? But they're also panicking at the same time, okay? And the reason why they're panicking, or allegedly they're panicking, they're pretending like, you know, this is going to be some type of big threat, but they are panicking because during Trump's confirmation that, hey, he's probably going to be arrested on Tuesday, he called for protests, okay, in an effort to take back the country, okay? Now, the mainstream liberal media, as they always do, extrapolated what Trump said to basically mean the absolute worst, which to them is a white supremacist call to violence.
Is this good for Trump politically? Because he is right now a declared candidate for president.
Yes. I mean, I think that he's banking on it being something that helps him, but he is playing with a fire that he doesn't know how to contain and that nobody knows how to contain, right? I mean, I think it is a little unnerving that his first political campaign appearance for his 2024 run is in Waco, right? We're at the 30th anniversary of the Waco standoff, right? If you're talking about trying to engender militant consciousness among Americans about the need to fight the federal government with violence, well, Waco's a nice place to try to do that from. That's a nice resonant place to try to do that from. I mean, him being indicted on a charge related to campaign finance, tax and business fraud, again, doesn't have to be the end of the world for him and could potentially be a positive for him. But if he's asking for a militant, racially tinged, violent response from his followers, that's something that won't be good for him. You know, January 6th is not good for Trump's political legacy, for all the other things that it is, for all the other things it means for our country. It didn't make him more electable for coming back as another term as president. And so he's trying to start something that I don't think he can take responsibility for how it will finish. And so I just don't think it's wise on his part, just a pure political strategy, for him to be calling for what he's calling for.
Yeah, so Rachel Maddow seems to believe that it is unwise for Trump to call for protests because somehow, some way, there's some risk of violence based off what we saw on January 6th. Now, here's the thing about that. I think that Democrats agree when the left-wing woke revolutionaries were protesting in the street that you have a constitutional right to protest, right? You have a constitutional right to freedom of speech, okay? And it's funny how when Trump says, hey, you know, I want people to protest if, you know, I'm arrested or extradited or charged or whatever, does he not have a constitutional right to do that, right? Like every other Democrat has called for protests, okay? I'm just saying. But you notice how, again, she is fear-mongering here. It's a racially tinged call to violence, racially tinged, okay? He's calling out the white supremacists, right? The white supremacists to go out there and commit acts of violence. I don't think that's going to happen, right? I really don't think that if there is a protest that is going to get very violent. I really don't think so because, you know, we all know how the government treats conservative individuals who protest violently, right? Just, again, look at what happened to the prisoners on January 6th. Those people weren't even violent, some of them, and they still got the book thrown at them, right? So I think that most people should be smart enough to understand you know, that there's not a level playing field in regards to what the leftists are allowed to protest about and what people on the right are allowed to protest about, right? Because, again, freedom of speech for conservatives does not exist in this country, okay? But, hey, you know, Rachel Maddow is fake news. I mean, like, court-ruled fake news. So we should actually refer to one of MSNBC's legal analysts, and let's see what his opinion is on Trump's calls for protest. And he goes as far as to claim that his calls for protest may actually get him in legal trouble, more trouble.
Final point is his language in that Truth Social, where he stays just on this side of the law by saying you should protest. Of course, everyone has a constitutional right to protest peacefully. The language, take our nation back, it's a little closer to the line. And it's notable to me that he did not say you should protest peacefully. It was sort of conspicuous that he left that word out, even though, as we all know, on January 6th, he did throw that word in, which gave him some potential legal cover, but he didn't do that here.
Yeah. So you seen that, you heard that, okay? Trump calling for protest but not using the word peacefully could potentially get him in legal trouble because apparently when you call for protest, you have to make sure that you say that, hey, it has to be peaceful in order for people to interpret it as a peaceful call and for it to be a non-violent call. Do you guys understand how this is supposed to work? They're holding Trump to such a high standard that if he calls for protest, he has to make sure that he puts the word peacefully in there to describe it, or else it is automatically interpreted as a call to violence. Who else is judged by that standard, right? Of if you call for protest, you're automatically assuming that, hey, he's calling for violence. Incredible stuff. Incredible leap of logic there from the mainstream liberal media. And the saddest part about this, guys, is that they're much more concerned about Trump's words on Truth Social than they are about actual real world acts of domestic terrorism coming from left-wing extremists like Antifa, right? Like what happened at Cop City, or what currently is happening there, because these people seem to be obsessed with not allowing that police facility to get built. Again, MSNBC has not covered it. They have not talked about it, and they will not talk about it, okay? But these are the people that are so concerned about domestic terrorists, or so they say, okay? Because they bought Maxine Waters on the show. Maxine Waters, who has an extensive history, along with the rest of the Democrat Party as well, too, of making overt calls to violence in this country. Take a look.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Yeah, so that lady, right? That lady, they bought on to MSNBC to discuss Trump's so-called call to violence and why it's so bad.
This president has conducted himself in a way that he does not deserve not to be arrested. He should be arrested. He should be indicted. And the charges that he's been indicted on are minimal as opposed to the charges that I believe he could have been indicted on. I don't know what's going to happen. When he announces himself, it's almost like he's attempting to organize his domestic terrorists to show up and to resist him being arrested. You have to be careful with him. He didn't just, go ahead.
Finish that thought real quick.
I beg your pardon?
Finish the thought you were going to make before I interrupted.
Oh, I just wanted to, have you to understand that perhaps he was trying to organize the domestic terrorists to protest his arrest.
Right.
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful about him making that announcement. He's doing it for a reason.
Right, and we are being careful about reporting that aspect of his Truth Social post. But I want to be clear, the former president has not officially been indicted. And as a result, we do not know what, if any, charges he could be indicted on until we hear from the Manhattan DA.
Yeah, so Maxine Waters is calling Trump supporters domestic terrorists. She just flat out just saying that, oh, you're a domestic terrorist, right? But again, haven't heard her comment on anything about the actual domestic terrorism going on down in Atlanta at Cop City. Haven't heard MSNBC comment on it. These people who are so concerned about Trump supporters and what Trump supporters might do not seem to be concerned at all about actual real acts of domestic terrorism in this country. They're scared of the Trump supporter boogeyman, right? That, in my opinion, the threat has failed to materialize, okay? Because, again, I mean, January 6th, only a small minority of people that day were actually violent or caused any real damage, really, to be quite honest with you, if you compare it to other acts of domestic terrorism, right? Since that's what we're talking about here, this is what we're categorizing it as. Like, for example, the BLM protests or the Antifa riots, which were much more costly, okay? And if this guy, Jonathan Capehart, was actually a real journalist instead of a Democrat Party propagandist and cheerleader, he would have asked Maxine Waters, well, what is the difference between your rhetoric in the past when you call for protest and getting into people's faces and stuff like that? What is the difference between what you said and what Trump is saying, right? What's the difference, right? What is the difference? I would have loved to hear Maxine Waters explain the difference between Trump's rhetoric and her rhetoric. Because to me, if I listen to both of what they said side by side, I would think that Maxine Waters is probably much more likely to be issuing a call to violence. So does that mean that Maxine Waters should be locked up? According to her own argument against Trump, she should, right? She should be locked up. Okay? Locked up. I'm just saying. It's funny how these Democrats, again, are boohoo and, crying and fear-mongering about Trump calling for a protest, while at the same time they cheer on Democrats and liberals and leftists calling for a protest. Again, it's like people on the right, conservatives don't have a right to freedom of speech. They don't have a right to protest the government. But the leftists, not only do they have a right to protest the government, they have a right to violence in protest of the government. Again, it's funny how that works. It's really amazing how this works. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.